the coup d'etat really is a meta study that was done in 2017, where they looked at 6,700 A/B split tests. And of those 6,700 A/B split tests, they found that there were three behavioral design principles that universally drove more conversion than anything. And those were in order of urgency, scarcity, number one, social proof, number two, and urgency, number three. So if you have those three components, scarcity, social proof, and urgency, you're going to have a much higher conversion rate. So they studied 29 different behavioral design principles in that study, but those three consistently and regularly outperformed everything else. So everybody can benefit from reviews. Everybody needs reviews, but particularly if you're selling something that's complex, it's electronic, it's detail oriented, it's expensive, it affects your ego, your image, your prestige, your status, your money, or your health. Absolutely have to have reviews, and not only reviews, but as many reviews as you can get, and recent reviews, because there's also research that says people look at reviews that are more current. In fact, a lot of people start discounting the value of the reviews if they're over 2 weeks old.
You are listening to Power Marketing with Kevin Lee. Kevin and his agency Did It have helped thousands of businesses win through superior marketing, as have his books, articles, speaking engagements, and the E-Marketing Association Power Marketing podcasts. Here's Kevin.
So I live and breathe marketing, which is why I'm so excited to speak to both DJ and Scott, who are founded Shopper Approved, and we ran into each other at a conference recently. So for those folks who don't know what Shopper Approved is, if you could just give us a quick origin story, that'd be really fun. It's a fun way to always hear about what got the entrepreneur thinking, I got to do this.
Right. Yeah. So back in 2008, which seems like eternity online, but I was on Amazon one night and I saw what they were doing with ratings and reviews on their product pages. And I just thought, man, why doesn't somebody do this for other websites so that they can compete against Amazon? And I thought it was the coolest idea. So I stayed up half the night writing notes and diagrams and things. And I went to the office the next day and I got everybody together and I'm like, I got the best idea. And I pitched it and everybody hated it. And so I was disappointed, just crushed. My dreams were crushed. And so I tabled it for a year. And then my dad and I were business partners at the time. And we were running another software company called TrustGuard, which does website security scanning, which we still do. And we were just fighting constantly. And so one day I just talked to him in my car. I'm like, Dad, if I don't have my own project, I'm going to walk because I love you too much to fight every day. Right. And so he's like, okay, I'll let you do your review thing, that you think is so cool. But I get to control the other company and you don't have a say. And so that day I walked away from our security company and I started Shopper Approved.
Cool.
And it's been a wild ride. So we're completely bootstrapped from day one. And in 2016 and 2017, we made the Inc. 500 2 years in a row. And that was pretty cool. We also made several lists in Utah where we live, top 100 lists. And it's just been a wild ride. So here we are in 2024, still doing the thing. We're one of the oldest review platforms online, and we just love it. We love being the underdog and just taking on the other review platforms that have taken on hundreds of millions in VC, and we're just fighting against them every day. It's so fun.
Yeah, well, there's a certain honor to being bootstrapped, right? So congrats on that. So obviously, ratings and reviews are user-generated content, right? Which is sort of it's a different form of content. So how you say that is like, what's the main differentiator between sort of rating content or review content particularly, and sort of the other forms of content you would usually find on websites?
Yeah, that's a great question, Kevin. So Scott and I actually looked at that, and what we came up with is three buckets. So we identified three types of content. One is UGC, user-generated content. The second is BGC, brand-generated content, which is what comprises 90% of your website typically, right? And then EGC, expert-generated content. So that might be experts in the category or the product, industry, et cetera, providing white papers, research, or comparisons or analysis, that kind of thing. But UGC really makes up your reviews, your testimonials, your social media, your community content. That's all UGC, user-generated content. And of that, reviews and testimonials are really what drives the social proof, the content that people are specifically looking for to make a decision. Because everybody is basically looking for who else likes it, bought it, recommends it, uses it, et cetera, because we basically kind of follow the herd, right? It's a behavioral design principle, and we really like to do what other people have done or are doing, especially if they're people in our tribe or people that are in our social circles, et cetera, or people that we relate to. So if we relate to the people that are leaving those reviews or testimonials, that's even more powerful. But that UGC really does differentiate significantly from BGC. So now think about that new Google search tab called Perspectives. Have you seen that?
Yeah.
So Perspectives is made up of what? 100% UGC, right? It's Reddit, it's Quora, it's YouTube, it's reviews, it's communities, it's forums. So Amazon, Google has made this new tab that says, you know what we're going to do? We're going to make this really easy, really convenient for the user to see all the UGC around this search term. And we've also noticed that Reddit and Quora are getting a lot of search dominance lately because of that community UGC perspective. And when we think about it, it's really because it's creating that authentic, raw, transparent, current, unfettered, unfiltered content that the consumer is looking for. They don't want the canned, the manipulated, right? They want, what does Kevin Lee think about this pair of shoes? What does Mary Smith think about this car, et cetera? They really want to know from the consumer, which is why Reddit, Quora, community, reviews, UGC, are doing so incredibly well in search. Now we think about the Google Helpful Content Update, and there's been two, right? One each year. And they keep defining the fact that what we really are looking for is not for you to game the system, but simply provide the consumer helpful content. Helpful content being answer their question, provide them the information they're looking for, and particularly give them that transparent, authentic, raw information that comes from UGC. So that's how it differentiates.
For sure. I do have a follow-up question because you mentioned twice both authenticity and transparency.
Mhm.
And some places, whether they're e-commerce sites or whatever, or places you might engage with this UGC, it's anonymized, right? Or the person can put in any old handle that they want, right? So it's not necessarily their PII, their personal identifiable information. When I leave a review for a business in Google, I'm using my Google login at the time, right?
Mhm.
Which may or may not be fully transparent as to PII, right? I may be using my name or I may be using a handle. And so it would seem to me that the way people's level of trust may differ, right, with regards to the authenticity and transparency, depending on whether they sort of feel like that's a real person or not, right?
Right.
So I'd love to hear your thoughts on as you help facilitate these reviews, right? Do you try to skew it in such a way that people are using PII only because it sort of adds that extra level of authenticity or transparency, or do you just sort of say they can just go ahead and leave the information and we'll use it?
Oh, that's a great question. And I do have a follow-up to the whole UGC story there, but to answer your question specifically, we have verified reviews.
Right.
So we're a Google review partner. We're also a Bing review partner. And we have to adhere to very stringent, rigid standards in which to qualify as a Google review partner for both seller reviews. Seller reviews are about the website or the brand of the merchant versus product reviews, which are about the product. So we're a Google review partner for both. And what that means is that, number one, they have to be verified customers. They can't just go in and leave a review. It's like an open review platform. That might be Trustpilot, Better Business Bureau, etc. Right? These are Yelp. Right? These are very common open review platforms where anybody can go in and leave a review, whether they bought the product or not. Could be a competitor, could be a disgruntled employee, could be a customer, but you really don't have to verify your purchase. Whereas we are a verified review platform by design, because we want to be able to say verified review next to that review. And you can simply hover over that and see that, oh, this person, okay, is verified because they actually checked out. They actually bought the product.
Mm-hmm.
So that helps add that credibility. And a lot of people say, that's one of the reasons I want to work with a verified review platform, because I don't want, these fake reviews. And we see Amazon, Trustpilot, et cetera, having to remove millions of fake reviews because they're basically manipulating a brand's image and a purchase decision on the consumer side without any verification or validation whatsoever.
Right.
And so the government's come down and said, you know what? This is actually false advertising if it's an unverified review that's manipulating a decision. So the FTC actually cracked down and said, we got to get rid of these unverified fake reviews as much as possible that are manipulating decisions. So there's that. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that pretty much answers the question.
And I would add to that, Kevin, consumers don't know the difference. I mean, that's one of the difficult things. And I think that's one of the reasons why you're probably bringing up the question, is because when consumers are searching online, how do they know that we're a verified review platform and somebody's an open review platform, right? So one of the things we're trying to do is educate consumers on the difference. And so because it's important, a lot of companies, like businesses, through hard knocks and trial and error, figure out that there's two different types of reviews, but it takes time, and usually they'll find it out the hard way when they get some bad reviews from people that they don't know or that they can't verify. And so that's one of the reasons why we've really tried hard to do verified reviews in what we do, is just because of that authenticity in that, and be able to make sure that they're real.
Great. So, next question is really about the syndication of reviews, right? So, sometimes you want reviews wherever the consumer is looking up information on either a brand, a product, or a merchant, and so that means that often you're syndicating out reviews, but you also don't want duplicative content, particularly from an SEO perspective. So I'm curious as to whether you sometimes curate which reviews show up where, or whether sort of all reviews sort of show up everywhere.
Good question. So it depends, I guess would be the best answer for that. So there's big players in this space like Google, Bing, and those are the two main ones. There's the BBB. There's some other places where we actually have partnerships where we can syndicate all the reviews we collect. And so because we're sending everything there, yes, they are duplicated on those different platforms. And so that does happen. But typically those larger sites, they aggregate reviews from multiple places. So different review platforms and things, and they put it all together. So they're not showing the exact same thing to everybody.
Right.
And then on the other side of that coin, something that we do particularly is we have a tool that allows our clients to redirect their customers after they buy to other review platforms, and they can only leave a review one time on that platform. So those aren't necessarily syndicated, but they're redirected.
Yeah.
And so what that allows the business to do is to effectively manage their reputation in an ethical way across multiple review platforms because they're not manipulating it, because we control where those reviews are sent. They have no control over that. And so whatever the customer says, once they get there, I mean, is up to the customer, right?
Right.
And so there's those two different approaches, and we use both to try to get, maximum exposure for the brand, but do it in an ethical way.
Right. Right. That's great. One thing that's changed in the last 5 or 6 years in particular is the surge in the popularity, both from the consumer side, but the platform side of video-based reviews, right? And it's just
Hmm.
become, smartphones have become so ubiquitous that, 10 years ago, if I wanted to leave a video review, I would have had to think about, all right, well, how exactly am I going to do that? Like, what am I going to shoot it with, and how do I get it uploaded? And so now a lot of the platforms do allow and facilitate, video-based reviews. So how should the business treat that differently? Given the fact that there's going to be a certain group of consumers who are sort of really excited about leaving video-based reviews, and others may be more reluctant to, due to their own, self-esteem or charisma, or whatever it is, right? So, how do you make those authentic and useful to the folks who are going to be viewing those reviews?
Yeah, that's another great question. In the past, it's kind of been a little bit of the Wild West because you ask somebody to leave a video review, and it's hard to keep them focused on a particular topic or question. So many times it's kind of generic and general, or it comes across as maybe more of an unboxing video. But they usually don't get into a lot of detail and specifics that a lot of consumers would find useful. However, we're coming out with a new groundbreaking technology that's going to address that. So those video reviews will actually be very specific about specific attributes, characteristics, reasons why they bought it, what they like best, etc.,
Mhm.
to give those videos, to your point, much more value versus just being a general, just got it today, looks great, glad I got it. Okay. Authentic, real,
Right.
but helpful, maybe, maybe not.
Yeah.
However, I will say this, that what we're finding is that particularly the younger generations who are obviously digital natives, very comfortable with video, very comfortable
Yeah.
with, they've been comfortable with YouTube and of course TikTok and Instagram and Reels and Shorts, and they live in video. They live in video. So they're very comfortable, very adept with the technology to process what to do, what not to do. They all want to be video stars. They want to be influencers. So, they're very good at putting that, kind of best foot forward. But for the non-digital natives, they need a little coaching, a little guidelines, a little direction. So we've created a product that will be coming out that will provide that direction to keep the questions and the answers and the videos on point, on task, to be more helpful, more useful, searchable by keyword, by product, by attribute, by feature, by benefit, making them much more usable. Now there's a difference between video testimonials and video reviews.
Mhm.
So testimonials are typically, hey, Kevin, I'd like to interview you about what you like about our company or how you engage with our brand or that kind of thing, right? Usually more scripted, more controlled. Whereas a video review is very off the cuff, ad hoc. It's entirely up to the consumer to do it, to say what they want to say, and show what they want to show. So those are kind of the differences. Now, the testimonials you'll typically have on a squeeze page or a landing page, whereas reviews you can put on YouTube, your own YouTube channel. You can put them on your product pages, your category pages, your homepage, wherever you want to put them, and they're more authentic, more raw,
Right.
more transparent.
Cool. That's really useful. And I think you probably to some extent hinted into my next question, which is I'm trying to understand the difference between the spontaneous content and then search optimized Q&A, which is a much more choreographed conversation.
Right. Yeah. So, when it comes to content, especially Q&A, we've really tried to do a deep dive into what makes questions and answers successful online. and what can we do with it? How can we leverage that content? Because a lot of people, they think Q&A is just a tool that you put on a product page where customers can ask questions and you can provide an answer about that product. But really, it's so much more than that if you understand the strategy behind it. And so I would say the difference between, like, if somebody just spontaneously asks a question and it's answered versus having strategy behind the answer is that you can optimize it for search. And that gets missed a lot because, like, if somebody says, if they're on a product page and you're like, does this t-shirt come in blue? And you say yes, right? You missed out on a huge opportunity. So if strategically you say, if they say, does this shirt come in blue? You could change the question as the owner, right? You could say, does this Hanes 100% cotton Metallica t-shirt come in blue, right? And then you can answer the question and say, yes, this Metallica all cotton t-shirt comes in blue. It also comes in red and yellow and pink, right?
Right.
And then when Google searches it, they're like, oh, okay, I can spider this. This is a real question with a helpful answer. I can actually put this in search. And so they just have to think strategically about Q&A. And every time you answer a question, think about it in terms of how can I provide the most helpful answer to that question so that Google will see it as the answer to the question.
Mm-hmm.
Because if Google sees it as the answer, they will actually put it in the featured snippet portion of the search, which is above position 1. And those get up to 30 to 40% of all the traffic on a page, right?
Yeah.
So, and even if they don't put it in the featured snippet, they'll probably put it in one of the top positions in the search results. So it's a huge opportunity, and a lot of people miss it. But there definitely is a difference between just writing a spontaneous question and leaving a generic answer versus having strategy behind it.
Yeah, that brings up a comment that I'll make, which is one of the reasons I was so excited about talking to you guys, is because not only are reviews syndicated out, but because of the Q&A feature of it, that's the type of content that LLMs really love to ingest as well.
Mm-hmm.
Large language models for the AIs, whether it's ChatGPT or Google Bard or whatever other, some of the new ones, Claude, and then there's other ones coming out. They love to ingest that content. And when they find that content in lots of different places, it has a similar effect from the research we've been able to do and validate thus far, is it has a similar effect to sort of what used to be called barnacle SEO, which is the idea that the more places that I can find to talk positively about me, the more likely some of those places will rank in Google. And so I don't just get one bite at the apple with my own domain ranking. I get really my Yelp page ranks, my LinkedIn page ranks. And as long as those other places have unique content and is generally positive about my brand, those are all wins. And they're now feeding the LLM, right? So I know we didn't put that down as a topic, but the LLMs are like the future of search at this point, because we anticipate the algorithms will go beyond the helpful content update to really sort of potentially even zero-click searches where you don't even get a link to click on. It just answers the question for you, the chatbot. And so I think folks who have been ignoring reviews, this is the year to stop ignoring reviews, because they're feeding the LLMs. They're not only an SEO tactic and a tactic for social proof. They go way beyond that. So
that's a really good point. And I wanted to bring up a couple things on that, because I know we talked a little bit about this at the conference when we ran into each other. But one is the barnacle SEO. So for years, we've been syndicating and distributing reviews to multiple review platforms, as well as Google, Bing, Yahoo, Facebook, YouTube, the major review, third-party platforms, etc. So there's part of your barnacle strategy. Now, the other part is, and you brought it up, is that with our Q&A tool, it automatically adds the schema markup for the featured snippet. And it creates an H1 out of the question and puts that question and answer in a separate folder. So it's easily indexed and optimized for the featured snippet automatically. So that's an SEO's dream. The other thing is that what we have found is that when we answer a question and we also link to that answer from a blog article or a product page, then both rank. So it goes back to a podcast you did earlier in the year when you're talking about, well, it's one thing to get a listing on page one listing. It's another thing to get multiple. That's what we find. We find that when you do a strategic deep linking strategy between the Q&A, the blog, the product pages, all three, maybe several blog pages, you can get the Q&A in the featured snippet. You can get the blog in position 1 or 2. You can get a product page in position 3 or 4, right? And then with the reviews, let's just say you do a mikesbicycle.com reviews, which is a very common search term, not Mike's Bicycle, but the brand reviews. Very common search term. In fact, if most e-commerce brands look at their Google Search Console, they'll see a lot of traffic and a lot of searches around the brand reviews, or is brand legit, which is another very common search term. So by syndicating and distributing the reviews for that barnacle strategy to multiple platforms and social media sites like Facebook and YouTube, you're going to get multiple hits. In fact, we have clients that own page 1 as a result of that. So that's the ultimate strategy, right? Is you want to own page 1 for those is mikesbicycle.com legit or mikesbicycle.com reviews. You want to own all of that. You want to make sure that you're showing up in multiple places and owning the review platforms as well as your own site, as well as YouTube, Facebook, Google, Bing, etc. So that's part of our whole reputation management play, is owning page 1.
Absolutely. And we've been talking sort of somewhat interchangeably across retailers than the brands that the retailers carry, which could be house brands or it could be manufactured brands from a different manufacturer. And then you got services businesses. So do you find that there are certain industry sectors where reviews are particularly more powerful? Because you certainly mentioned that people are often inserting like a brand name and reviews, or store name and reviews, or a service provider and reviews. But do you find that there are some interesting skews around industries where it becomes particularly important?
Yeah, that's a super question. So thinking about Google's EAT, expertise, experience, authority, trust, and then they have the YMYL subcategory of that, your money, your life, is really, really critical for a brand. It's absolutely necessary for survival for a brand that's in the YMYL category. Anything to do with finance, money, investments, banking, insurance, etc., as well as health, nutrition, healthcare, diets. You have to have reviews and social proof. I mean, not by law, but just if you want to survive, because nobody's going to buy a product that's going to affect their health, their life, or their wealth without tremendous social proof. So that's important. Now, there was another big study done years ago, and it's been cited many, many times, from a catalog company, Spiegel. And they worked with Northwestern University to do this big study to validate the efficacy and the impact of product reviews on their website. And what they found was that higher priced products converted at like 300 and something percent, 320% higher with reviews. So they got over a 3x conversion rate by simply adding reviews to those higher priced items, because nobody wants to take a chance on a $300 bookshelf if they don't know for certain that that's the right bookshelf. They also found other studies that anything to do with ego, image, prestige products have to have reviews. But the coup d'etat really is a meta study that was done in 2017, where they looked at 6,700 A/B split tests. And of those 6,700 A/B split tests, they found that there were 3 behavioral design principles that universally drove more conversion than anything. And those were in order of urgency, scarcity, number 1, social proof, number 2, and urgency, number 3. So if you have those 3 components, scarcity, social proof, and urgency, you're going to have a much higher conversion rate. So they studied 29 different behavioral design principles in that study, but those three consistently and regularly outperformed everything else. So everybody can benefit from reviews. Everybody needs reviews, but particularly if you're selling something that's complex, it's electronic, it's detail oriented, it's expensive, it affects your ego, your image, your prestige, your status, your money, or your health. Absolutely have to have reviews, and not only reviews, but as many reviews as you can get, and recent reviews, because there's also research that says people look at reviews that are more current. In fact, a lot of people start discounting the value of the reviews if they're over 2 weeks old. And once they hit a
Really?
month old, they devalue them even more. So if you say, you know what, I've got reviews, I'm good, I'm done. You're never done, because the consumer doesn't think you're done. They want to make sure that you're showing recent reviews and as many reviews as possible, because it all adds up to social proof.
Yeah,
Yeah,
follow-up
and
question to that. Go ahead, Scott.
I was just going to say, Google even drops reviews after 12 months. They won't even display them anymore. So you've got to constantly, be collecting.
Interesting. In some industries, there's a little bit of a headwind that one faces in that, if it's going to be an authentic review in Google or somewhere else, there may be a resistance by the consumer in leaving the review. It could be healthcare related, or it could be just a topic that a person's not comfortable necessarily associating their name with. Like,
Mm,
it could be a therapist or a weight loss clinic. I mean, you may have just dropped 80 pounds, but you love your weight loss clinic, but do you really want to put down that, you were at a weight loss clinic? And so, and even just asking in some cases, the professional guidelines say you're not supposed to ask for reviews as a professional in some of these trust specific categories.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't seen a ton of that on our side, but I think that probably more comes in line of like if you're asking for testimonials and
Mm,
there's an agenda behind it,
yeah.
they probably have to disclose that. I mean, what we do for the most part is we just ask everybody for a review, and it's not incentivized. So
Yeah.
whether they say it or not is kind of up to the end user.
Mhm.
And so I think it just depends on what you're trying to accomplish with the content you're creating. Um, and there are different industries that Google won't allow to advertise on, like in search with star ratings and things like that, like guns and alcohol and tobacco and things like that. So you do have to kind of be aware of that if you're in those particular industries, and Google does have a list of those. But for the most part, they do allow ratings and reviews to display if you collect them through a Google approved partner.
Right, right. Yeah, the follow-up question to the earlier one was actually around some marketers or company owners or brand owners are like, oh, I just want only 5-star reviews.
Oh,
And I think I
yeah.
remember seeing a study where actually consumers almost like the fact that there's the occasional negative review,
Hmm.
especially if the negative review was helpful in some way. And I know that I've spoken to other people, and particularly around, Amazon products, where you'll look at the negative reviews, and as you read the negative reviews, you'll realize the person was completely clueless and like didn't know how to plug
Hmm.
it in, or didn't know that it was upside down, or whatever, didn't know that you can't, mix ammonia with baking soda or whatever. Like, and you're like, well, of course they gave it a 1 star because they didn't know what they were doing, right? And so
Right.
I think it's important that the brand owners understand that they shouldn't freak out if there's, the occasional odd, less than 5-star review, and that it to some extent adds authenticity to the overall review corpus. Would you agree with that?
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. In fact, the study you're referring to, Kevin, found that the ideal rating is between 4.2 and 4.7.
Interesting.
So people actually, you hit that top of the bell curve if you hit a 4.8, 4.95, right?
Yeah.
Because you're gaming it. Something must be amiss.
Yeah.
Obviously, they don't want to buy a product that is a 3-star or a 2-star.
Right.
Uh, so that's the kind of sweet spot.
Yeah.
And we actually have a tool that allows you to moderate that and make sure that each of the review platforms are in that tolerance range.
Right.
automatically. So that's really fun. But back to your point, it's also very important, critically important, that brands respond to reviews. Because like you said, if there's a 3-star review or a 2-star review, what people are really looking for is, did the brand solve the problem? Did they address the issue? And how well did they address the issue? Because everybody assumes every product, every brand, every manufacturer, every service provider is going to have a hiccup. It happens, right? The issue is, did you solve it? How quickly did you solve it? And did you do it in a, consumer centric, way?
Yeah.
Or were you belligerent and obnoxious and, well, you're an idiot and you didn't, plug it in and you're a moron. So forget you, right?
Right.
They're really looking for is, how did the brand take care of the issue? And that's one of the reasons people look at negative reviews. The other reason they want to see negative reviews is to see how bad is bad. If it's a minor thing, like, oh, the instructions didn't tell me to plug it in before I turned it on. Minor, right? Okay, I can deal with that. But I plugged it in and it blew up in my face and burned down my house. That's a different issue. So they want to see how bad is bad. And
Right.
that transparency and that authenticity is actually a benefit because it creates trust. If you remember the copywriter Joseph Sugarman, do you remember him?
Yeah.
Blue blocker sunglasses. His copy strategy was he would first admit a fault about the product, but the fault was minor. And then that lowered the resistance and it gained trust. Because what it said was, oh, you're a transparent brand. You're saying that these sunglasses or whatever it was he was selling may not be for everybody, and here's why. But if you fit this category and you have this need, it's the perfect product, and here's why.
Right.
So by putting that little negative up front, it actually creates more trust. But if all you have is perfect 5-star reviews, everybody assumes something's being manipulated.
Right.
Yeah, we actually call that turning a negative review into a net positive. And I actually wrote a really good article about the strategy behind that. I'm happy to give that to you if you want to throw that in.
Sure.
For
I'll
the
include
for
it in
the
a link when we write it up for sure.
Yeah, it's a fascinating deep dive into that world and how you can leverage it to actually turn negative reviews to your advantage.
Yeah.
It's a great
So
strategy.
absolutely.
And we
Over the many years of doing SEO, when I started in SEO before Google was even founded, once the social media profiles popped up, they at least factored into, our reputation management strategy, but we weren't coming at it from a reviews perspective necessarily. So I'd love to hear how the social media profiles, how you feel they fit into both sort of a reputation management context, but also once you start to layer in the interaction with the consumer within those social media platforms, how that changes the conversation.
Another good question. Obviously, social media platforms are critical. You have the brand, and then you have the individual employees, executives, leadership teams. Both have to be addressed. So let's talk about the brand first. So let's say we have a brand channel for LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube. Obviously, we can send our video reviews to our YouTube channel. We can also send those video reviews to our Facebook channel, as well as our LinkedIn channel. We can also send written reviews there and create that omnipresence, because we want to have those reviews and that social proof showing up on the brand channels, as well as the brand website, as well as the review platforms, as well as Google and Bing. On the personal side, thinking integrated marketing now, we want to make sure that especially the leadership team are all on the same page in terms of, here's who I am, here's what we do, here's who we service, here's what we provide, here's the problems we solve. Maybe I'm different, but I think we all pretty much do this. I did it to you. Before I talk to somebody, I go to their LinkedIn profile. I want to see what their background is, what they've done, where they've been, what their, strategy is, what their secret sauce is, et cetera. I want to know who I'm talking to. And most people are the same. So having that continuity and that integrated strategy across individual platforms and profiles, as well as the brand profile, is very important. And again, you can send reviews and testimonials to those channels to make sure that you're getting that social proof throughout the funnel and not just in the planned, but also in the unplanned brand engagements.
So I'd love to hear, if you've started to get any hard evidence of sort of the AIs and the extent to which not just the information that's out there in the review ecosystem and the ratings ecosystem, but also people interacting with those AIs is potentially influencing those AIs in choosing one brand over another. Have you changed your strategy over the last year as a result of that?
Yeah, as I said before, we've been syndicating and distributing reviews for years to multiple platforms, social media, as well as search engines, as well as review platforms. So we feel like we kind of been ahead of the game because we do have lots and lots of examples with clients where you can do a brand review search and they can own that first page because of the distribution and the syndication of those reviews and video reviews to these multiple channels. So back to the Barnacle SEO strategy, we've been doing that, and it's working, and it has worked. It's always worked, but absolutely in the LLM model with AI, it's still working, and we just have to keep the course because Google likes it, the consumer likes it. You want to have that omnipresence, that ubiquitous nature in search by creating all that UGC and then syndicating and distributing that content across multiple channels and search engines. So we're staying the course, but we are using AI to power Q&A now to help add efficiency, effectiveness, time to value, so that the AI tool can look at your Google Search Console. It can look at other platforms, other websites, marketplaces to see if that same product has Q&A on that other website or marketplace, and then recommending questions and answers to create efficiency so that you can have faster time to value, faster SEO results, and more helpful content to address that Google helpful content, thirsty engine to provide the consumer what they're looking for. And so what we have found is that product pages using that AI tool can really optimize a product page in minutes versus an hour or so in the old-fashioned way. So that's kind of part of that AI play in the LLM, right? It's also part of the helpful content strategy. And by merging those helpful content with AI, we're able to get a lot more content created faster, distributed in more places, and showing up in more search results.
Yeah, we'll see if they close the loophole or not. But you guys have both been in reputation management for a long time, so you'll remember that there was a period of time where you could essentially train Google's autocomplete to include a specific brand, right? So if a person started to ask Google a question, Google would use the same kind of, Mad Libs, add this extra word in there, their machine learning tool, and you could game it, right? Because if you had enough people engaging in that search, right, it would start to assume that other people have that same intent, right? They eventually shut that loophole down because it was abused. But interestingly, there's a similar loophole now where unless you're using the professional version of ChatGPT, when you interact with ChatGPT, you're training the model, right? You're not only interacting with the data that's already in the model, you're training it. And so we've begun to see some instances where in the long tail, in particular, by having a conversation with the AI about different options with regards to something that is in the long tail, like, maybe the best webcam to use for podcasting that it uses Bluetooth, right? So that's enough other words relating to it that if you have probably had enough conversations with ChatGPT around it, you'd probably end up manipulating what its autocomplete would be. So it'll just be interesting to see. I just mentioned it because, I thought about that autocomplete that used to work, right? That hack that used to work where the search engine was actually learning from the consumer's search behavior, and it was changing the way the algorithm worked. And that of course didn't take long before the SEO community, grabbed on and gamed it, and they closed that. So I'm wondering if that same thing will start to happen in the SEO, in the AI community, where, folks will start to realize that they can try to game the, play the spam game, but with the AI, not just with Google and Bing.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, that's a
Yeah,
good point.
I think on our side, where we see SEO being benefiting what we do on the UGC side is we see it where we can aggregate different types of content and create almost like a summary and use AI to generate different types of summaries based on what the consumer wants to know, whether that's through review aggregation, or through content aggregation through Q&A. So we'll see where that goes. Amazon's kind of doing that already if you go to look at products there, and I can see that continuing. So my thought.
We
Right.
do get Q&A showing up, and the people also ask as well. Featured snippet, position 1, 2, 3, or people also ask. So again, kind of that multiple bites at the apple, which is nice. The other thing about long tail that you talked about earlier is obviously the longer the tail, the search, the higher the purchase intent. Because if you can find that rooftop air conditioning unit that fits on your 1982 Winnebago Chieftain, right? Then you're probably a buyer because
Yeah.
you're just trying to solve that one problem. And that's where Q&A really comes into play, is maximizing and leveraging those very specific long tail bottom funnel searches to serve that answer and drive them to that product page, because here's the answer and here's the product that provides that solution. And the old saying, riches and niches, if you can get enough of those long tail search terms to pop on page one, obviously you're going to collectively get a lot of high purchase intent, low funnel traffic, which is really the name of the game, because those are the buyers.
Great, great. So you guys decided that a book was something you wanted to accomplish. So you wrote Reputation King, and sort of how did you approach the writing of that? Was that the similar kind of, epiphany that you had when you started the business, where you said, okay, I got to do this book, and it like sat there for a couple of months, and then finally you're like, I can't help myself, I have to write this, and then you just sort of sat down and cranked it out, or was it more of a journey over time?
Well, we actually started writing the book because we were invited to produce a course for Dr. Cialdini and the Cialdini Institute. And so we decided to write a companion guide. The course is going to be about reputation management, online reputation management for e-commerce, using behavioral design principles. Scott and I are both certified Cialdini coaches, Online Influence Institute, et cetera. So we spent a lot of time really kind of deep diving into behavioral design, behavioral science, behavioral economics, whatever you want to call it, because that's all part of CRO. That's all part of influence. And so we're invited to create this course, and we wrote the book, and then we said, well, there's something here. And so, Scott can tell the rest of the story, why we kind of went from there and who we wrote it for and what the ultimate goal is. But the impetus was the Cialdini course.
Yeah, and I mean, it's crazy how things happen, right? Like how one thing leads to another, leads to another. Just the story that we have, I mean, really, Shopper Approve's been around since 2010. So we're a 14-year-old software company, and we've learned a ton of stuff over the years. I mean, being in the trenches, and like you said at the beginning, Kevin, you have that website where you test everything, right? That's your testing ground, so you can prove what's going on. We do that, but we have thousands of clients that kind of are our testing ground, right? So there's just so many cool tips and strategies and tools that we've learned over these 14 years. And when we started writing this book, it all just came together.
Mm.
And it just tells an incredible story. It feels like we're kind of like the Wizard of Oz pulling back the curtain and saying, hey, this is how it really works, right? So it's really interesting. It's a great read. And what we'd actually like to do, it's not it's not launched yet. This is the pre-launch version. But what we'd love to do for any of your association members is actually give them the digital copy and the audio book for free. And so
kind of you.
we'll actually give you a link that you can include. And yeah, let's get it
Great.
out
So
there.
yeah,
I
we'll
think
put
that'd
the
be
link on the EMA site along with the podcast. But of course, you guys are pretty easy to find on LinkedIn as well. Or I'm sure that people just could go to your website. There's probably a contact us form there as well.
Or you could just send me an email. My name is real easy, DJ at Shopper Approved, and just say book in the subject line, and I will follow up with a link, and you can just go and download the audio and the digital version instantly. We do want to make it available. We wrote the book for e-commerce executives because we want them to understand all the nuances of creating, managing, and improving their online brand, their reputation, their presence, and driving higher conversions as a result of a better brand reputation and that ubiquitous brand across the web. So it's really written for the executive because we feel that the executive has to have a top-down strategy. The reputation can't just be, sent off to a frontline employee and you manage the brand reputation, because the reality is it's the executive, the owner, the CEO, the founder that has the most at stake. And so we wanted to really explain, here's what's at stake, and here's what happens when you improve your reputation, and here's how to do it. So it's not just, oh, we've got reviews, we're good. That's part of it. You started the journey, but that's not the entire journey, because our whole philosophy is brand exposure and brand reputation and brand trust from search to checkout. Because how you appear in search and where you appear in search is the persuasion, and then how you appear on your website is the actual influence. So we're taking the entire Cialdini research, persuasion, and influence, combining it into a conversion path, as we call it, from search to checkout. Because when those review stars show up in search and you have one or more top search results, then you're more trusted. We all trust those top search results more, right? That's why they get the most clicks. So we want to make sure that that's part of the reputation management strategy. It's not just stars.
Yeah.
That's just
Well, I think this is certainly the year that people should take a fresh look at their reviews strategy for all the reasons that we covered, from AI through building trust, and as well as your point just now about micro conversions that people make all the way along the journey, where you can lose them anywhere there. And if you lose them anywhere there, that was a missed opportunity. So from every marketing touch point all the way through to whatever your equivalent is to a shopping cart, all of those places you want to continue the momentum, and your review UGC content is really key there. So thanks so much for sharing your wisdom, both on the podcast, but also within the book. I'm sure a bunch of people would love to do a deep dive on that.
Yeah, we're happy to do it, and thank you for having us on the show.
My pleasure.
Kevin Lee's Power Marketing is available on all your favorite podcast networks. Kevin loves helping businesses excel at marketing. Having marketing challenges? Just like Santa in The Miracle on 34th Street, if Kevin can't help you, he'll know someone who can. Find him on LinkedIn, subscribe, or follow.